So far, we've just been looking at symbols and what those symbols mean. Now that can be very confusing the first time you do it, so as I said, do take your time with this and go over it all again if you don't get it. So we looked at notes, we've looked at rests, and we've looked at rhythms, and hopefully by now you're up to speed a little bit more with those. Now once we've got all those things together, we need to be able to count. Now counting is one of the most important things you can do when you read. I really recommend, if you're not completely comfortable tapping your foot and playing at the same time, that you get really good at that. So if you're counting whole notes, half notes or quarter notes, then all you need to do really is just tap your foot on every beat. So you're tapping your foot like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's your grid. You're lining up what you're seeing on the paper to this grid. Now music exists in all different types of tempos, but just take a very comfortable tempo, like that. And that's your grid, that's your reference point. So if you see a whole note, it's one note that lasts for 4 of these. So if you see 4 quarter notes, again, it's one note on each of those counts. Not too tricky. When we start to get to 8th notes, however, you might want to think about how you count at that point. Here's one way of counting 8th notes. Now, when I was growing up, I had a bit of piano and guitar behind me, as well as trumpet actually, before I played the bass. So when I saw bass music, it tended to be just a few notes at a time, and I didn't find it incredibly difficult because I had the left hand piano knowledge down, which is bass clef. I didn't really learn to count this way, but what I did was tap my foot pretty religiously on every beat. So when I was seeing 8th notes, it was all about subdividing the beat. Okay, so if I'm tapping my foot 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 2 8th notes occur in beat 1, then the next 2 in beat 2, then beat 3, and then beat 4. So I know that each beat contains 2 8th notes. That's really all it is. Once you've got that, it's a visual thing. Anytime you see that, that's what you're doing. Until you internalize it in that way, you probably will have to just stop and work it out, figure it out. But if you see 4 8th notes, it's simply... Don't forget, we have those different tempos, so it'll be faster or slower depending on what you're doing. But one way of counting, which I still don't do, but I do recommend it, it's quite a good way of doing it, is to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That gives you your 8 8th notes that you get in a bar. Now for 16th notes, you can take it a step further and go 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Now again, I've never done this at all, but I subdivide every single beat that I see. Going back to quarter notes, you don't need to do this, do you? Because you just count to 4 and it's only when it gets subdivided, those quarter notes get subdivided. At that point, it's a good idea to count like this. So with these 16th notes, being 16 in a bar, again, I've got my foot tapping, and I know that every time my foot taps, 4 of these 16th notes occur. So I've just religiously got this thing going. So you can do this 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a thing to count those beats as they go by. You're not going to be able to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's too difficult. So this is a good way of getting around that. But all you're doing is counting to 4 really, and just making sure you have these subdivisions strong in your mind.